She slammed the wounded stranger against the log wall of her cabin, Winchester barrel pressed beneath his jaw, hammer cocked back hard. "Name." "Ma'am, I ain't here to—" "Your name, mister? You bleed on my floor, you give me a name." Blood ran from his shoulder onto the boards between their boots. His face was pale beneath a black beard, eyes the color of late autumn water unflinching. "Ethan Cole." "And what put that hole in your back, Ethan Cole?" He wet his cracked lips. "My brother." Clara Hayes did not lower the rifle 1 inch. If you love stories of frontier women who refuse to kneel to any man, please subscribe to the channel right now. Stay with me all the way to the final breath of this tale and tell me in the comments which town or city you are listening from. I want to see just how far this story travels across America. Now, settle in where you are. Pour yourself something warm, and let me take you back to Montana Territory, winter of 1892, to meet a woman named Clara Hayes. The knock had come an hour before dawn. 3 hard strikes that rattled the iron hinges. Clara Hayes had been sleeping in her clothes the way she always did in winter, rifle across her knees, boots by the fire, and she was on her feet before the 3rd knock finished. "Go away." "Ma'am, please." I said go away. I don't heal folks. I don't pray over folks. You got the wrong cabin. "They told me down in Brannigan's Creek you was Clara Hayes, the tracker." She went still. Nobody came to her door. Nobody. The people of Brannigan's Creek crossed the street when she walked through town and crossed themselves when she left it. The old women had names for her that her own mother would have slapped a preacher for saying out loud. And yet here was a man she could hear bleeding through the door, using her full name like he had earned the right. "Step back from the door." "Ma'am, step back." She heard boots scuff the frozen porch. A ragged, wet cough. She opened the door 2 inches with the barrel of her Winchester and looked into the dark. He was a big man. Tall, broad in the shoulders, even under the heavy buffalo coat. Dark beard caked with ice. A wide brim hat pulled low. A gash ran under his left eye. But what she saw first, what she could not stop seeing, was his left hand clamped over the back of his right shoulder, and the slow, steady blood working its way between his fingers. "Inside, slow. Keep that other hand where I can see it." He came in. He did not ask her to close the door behind him. He seemed to know she was not the kind of woman you hurried. Clara shut the door, slid the bolt, and by the time she turned around, she had the Winchester under his jaw and him pinned against the wall. "Name." "Ma'am, I ain't here to—" "Your name, mister." "Ethan Cole." "And what put that hole in your back, Ethan Cole?" "My brother." She did not lower the rifle, but something inside her, something that had been coiled tight since the knock eased by half a notch. A man who lies tends to lie big first. This one had gone small and ugly and true-sounding. "Sit." "Ma'am, Sit down before you fall down, Mr. Cole. I am not going to carry you." He lowered himself into the cane-bottom chair by her stove, like a man setting down a load he had been carrying too many miles. Clara kept the Winchester in her right hand, crossed to the basin, and threw a clean rag at him with her left. "Press that. Hard. If it soaks through in under 10 minutes, you are going to lose some years of your life tonight, and I do not have the time nor the temperament to save them." "Yes, ma'am." She leaned the rifle against the stove within reach of her hip, pulled off her coat, and crouched beside him. The smell of him was blood and horse and pine pitch, and something sharper underneath the sweat of a man who had been running on fear for too many hours. She peeled back the shoulder of his coat. The bullet had gone in clean just under the shoulder blade, and come out through the meat of his chest above the collarbone. Through and through. He had been lucky in the way a man only gets lucky when the Almighty has further use for him. "Your brother's a fair shot," she said. "He is. You got the 2nd bullet in you." "No, he only took the 1. "Why's that?" Ethan Cole looked at her. His hat was in his lap now. His hair was longer than most men wore it, black, streaked at the temples with something that was not quite gray, and his eyes were tired. Very, very tired. "Because he thought the first one killed me. And then he took my wife and rode north." Clara's hands did not stop working. She threaded a needle from her tin by the stove, dipped it in the whiskey she used for wounds, and never for drinking, and wiped the entry hole with a second rag. "This is going to hurt." "Yes, ma'am." "You can scream. I've had worse men scream in this cabin." "I reckon I won't." He did not. She stitched him in silence. 8 stitches in the back, 6 in the front, her hands as sure as a seamstress mending a torn sheet. She had done worse on herself once with her teeth on a willow twig. When she was done, she sat back on her heels and looked at him. "Now, you want to tell me the real story, or the one you rehearsed on the ride down from wherever your brother left you?" He almost smiled. It was the ghost of something that might have been charming 3 years and 2 tragedies ago. "You ain't what I expected, Miss Hayes." "Folks rarely are. Talk." "I'll pay you." "Talk first. I'll tell you if I'm listening." He reached slow into the inside pocket of his coat, keeping his eyes on hers, and drew out a leather pouch. He set it on her table. It struck the boards with the particular dull heavy chime of coined gold. 200 in double eagles, another 400 when it's done. Clara did not look at the pouch. She had seen gold before. Gold was just a tool you bought a way out of a bad life with, and she had wanted a way out of this bad life since she was 17 years old. $600 is a lot of money to hand a woman you met 12 minutes ago, Mr. Cole. It's every cent I got left to my name. The rest is in my brother's saddlebags riding north. How much all told? 8,000, in silver. Mined it myself over 4 years. She whistled low and soft. And your brother just took it. My brother took it. My wife rode out with him. I came home from setting traps on the South Ridge and found the stove cold and the strong box gone. I rode after them because I am a fool. He was waiting in the pass above Bitterroot Meadow. Put a bullet in my back before I even saw his horse. You saw him, though? After, to be sure. I crawled, 1/2 mile through fresh snow, saw him ride out with her. She was not tied. The words sat between them the way a body sits between 2 men who have just agreed to bury it. And the story you come to town with is what? A bear. A bear. A monstrous grizzly, ma'am. Took my wife from our homestead, killed my stock, left me for dead. I am hiring a tracker to put him in the ground before he does it to another family. Because no sheriff in this territory is going to cross 2 mountain ranges in January to chase a man who stole from his own brother and ran off with his own sister by marriage. But a tracker will chase a bear for gold, and nobody asks questions about a dead bear. Clara stood up. She walked to the stove and set a kettle on it. Her back was to him for a long moment, and he had the good sense not to speak into it. You want me to help you kill your brother. I want you to help me find him, Miss Hayes. What happens when I do is between him and me and the Almighty. And your wife. And my wife. She turned around. You are not a good liar, Mr. Cole, and that is the only reason I am going to consider this. A good liar would have stuck with the bear all the way through. Will you take the job? I haven't decided. What'll it take? 1,200, all of it. 6 now 6, when we bring them both down out of these mountains alive, because I do not track men, so other men can shoot them in the back. You want him dead. You want her dead. You do it in front of a marshal or a judge, or I walk away, and you can keep the gold, and I'll keep my mouth. He did not blink. Done. You didn't even think about it. Ma'am, I have been thinking about nothing else for 4 days. She poured coffee. Black as sin, hot as Hades, the only way she made it. She handed him a tin cup and sat down across from him at her small table. You tell anybody in town the real story. No. You tell anybody the bear story. 3 people. Enough for it to spread before I got to you. I figured the talk would help. It will. Folks'll be watching for a tracker and a grieving husband. They will not be watching for a man and a woman hunting other folks. Is that a yes, Miss Hayes? She looked at him over the rim of her coffee. That's a yes, Mr. Cole. God help us both. They rode out 3 hours past dawn. Clara took the buckskin mare, because the buckskin knew the passes north and would not spook at a rifle shot. Ethan rode his own horse, a big-chested bay that walked with a slight favor of the off foreleg, which Clara noted the way she noted the color of the sky and the depth of frost on the fence rail. She noted everything. She had been raised that way. Her father had been a Kentucky long hunter who came west chasing beaver and found nothing but winter, and he had taught her to read ground the way some men read scripture before a mining shaft fell on him when she was 14. Her older brother James had taken up the trade, and she had followed him until the winter he did not come home from the Yaak country. After that, folks in Brannigan's Creek stopped calling her Miss Hayes and started calling her the Hayes woman, and then, when they thought she couldn't hear them, worse things than that. None of it had ever stopped her from eating. None of it had ever stopped her from reading the snow. "How far?" she asked. "Day and a half if the weather holds. 2 if it turns." "It'll turn. Smell that wind." "I don't smell nothing." "That's because you're a valley man, Mr. Cole. I can smell a storm from the other side of Idaho." He almost smiled again. He had the decency, she noted, to look guilty about smiling at all. They climbed. The trail narrowed. Clara rode point, and he rode her flank without being told, which she filed away as a small point in his favor. A man who knew his place behind a tracker was a man who had learned respect somewhere, probably the hard way. She did not ask him about it. She did not ask him anything for the first 2 hours. She was listening to him breathe. A wounded man lies different from a well one, and a liar lies different from a truthful man, and she wanted his measure on both counts before any more words passed between them. At the fork above Beaver Dam Creek she reined in. "Which way did they go?" "West Fork, toward the old Cutter cabin." "Show me the tracks." "Ma'am." "The tracks, Mr. Cole, where you saw him ride out. Show me." "I told you I crawled back down the south slope. I didn't." "Then show me the tracks you made crawling. I want to see where this started." He hesitated. It was a small hesitation, less than a breath, but Clara had spent her life reading pauses, and this one had weight. "Up the East Fork, half a mile." "East Fork." "Yes, ma'am." "Your brother rode west, and you came in from the east." "I was on my way back from my trapline when he shot me." "All right." She turned the buckskin up the East Fork. The snow there was old and crusted with a new powder laid on top in the last day. Clara leaned low in the saddle and began to read. 2 horses. That much was true. One print was deeper, a shod horse carrying a heavy load, and one was lighter, quicker. Ethan's horse, and she counted the strides, another. A single rider on the second. No signs of a third horse, no signs of a pack animal carrying $8,000 in silver, which she already knew was no small matter, because $8,000 in silver would be near 60 pounds of dead weight, and no reasonable man loaded 60 pounds of evidence on a horse already carrying a woman. She sat back in the saddle. "Mr. Cole." "Ma'am?" "Your brother took the silver and your wife both on 2 horses." "Yes, ma'am." "On the horse he rode out on right here he wasn't carrying 60 pounds of silver. This horse walked light. Too light for that kind of load." Ethan was quiet. His horse shifted under him. "He could have cached it," he said. "He could have. A man shoots his brother in the back, he might not want to ride into the next county carrying the evidence. That's what I figured." "Where would he cache it?" "The Cutter cabin." "Which is where we're riding." "Yes, ma'am." She did not tell him what else the snow had told her. She did not tell him that somewhere between the crawl marks he had claimed and the hoofprints of the horse his brother had ridden there was a third set of boot prints, smaller. A woman's walk, and they did not match the gait of a woman being forced. They matched the gait of a woman who had walked out to a horse on her own 2 feet, stood still long enough to mount in her own time, and ridden off of her own free will. She did not tell him, because a man who has just been shot in the back by his own blood does not need to be told on the same morning that his wife walked out of their home without ever looking back over her shoulder. That was a thing you saved. That was a thing you let a man discover on his own in his own time when the mountains and the Almighty had prepared him for it. "We ride?" Clara said. "Yes, ma'am." They rode. The wind picked up the way she had said it would. By afternoon the sky had gone the color of a whetstone, and the first hard flakes were scudding down the draws. Clara pulled her scarf up over her mouth and kept her eyes on the trail, and every mile or so, she would lean down and read another piece of the story the snow was telling her. None of it matched the story Ethan Cole had told her in the cabin. It did not match in small ways at first. A gap where a man had stopped to rest that she would have expected an unwounded brother to skip. A place where the second horse had circled back as if to check something and then gone on. A shell-casing brass half buried from a rifle that had been fired at the sky or at nothing at all. Little pieces, little wrong pieces, but enough wrong pieces in enough places, and you were not reading the story a man had told you. You were reading the story somebody wanted you to read. That was a different thing entirely. They made camp at the base of Clearwater Pass an hour before full dark. Clara built the fire herself because she did not trust any man with a fire in country like this, and because the work steadied her. Ethan unsaddled the horses and tended to them, and did it well, which she noted. He did not ask her what she had seen. He did not try to fill the silence with talk. He sat against his saddle and ate the jerky she handed him, and drank the coffee she made him, and when she finally spoke, he met her eyes, straight on. "Mr. Cole?" "Yes, ma'am." "When your brother Lucas rode off?" He went still. She watched him go still. "I didn't tell you his name." "No, you didn't." "You're a careful woman, Miss Hayes. I am a woman who has stayed alive this long by noticing what men let slip. You let his name slip an hour after you sat down in my cabin. I have been waiting to hear if you'd say it again. You have not. Which tells me you did not mean to say it the first time. Which tells me you are not practiced at telling this lie, which is the only comfort I have had all day. His name is Lucas. And your wife?" He looked at the fire. "Emily. Emily Cole." "Emily Cole. You say her name the way a man says the name of a woman he has already buried." "Maybe I have." Clara poured the last of the coffee into his cup. The snow had begun to fall in earnest now, the kind of snow that did not mean to stop. "Sleep. I'll take first watch." "Ma'am, you've been riding since before dawn." "I have been tracking since before dawn, Mr. Cole. There is a difference. Sleep." He slept. He slept the way a wounded man sleeps, half sitting, one hand on the revolver in his lap, and Clara Hayes sat across the fire from him with her Winchester on her knees, and watched him, and watched the dark beyond him, and thought about the third set of boot prints in the snow at the East Fork. She thought about the shot in his back. She thought about $600 in double eagles sitting in her saddlebag and 600 more to come, and the cabin she could buy in Oregon with it, the one her mother had talked about before her mother died. The one with the apple trees and the soft green hills that never saw snow. She thought about the name Lucas Cole. She thought about the name Emily Cole. And somewhere between the second cup of coffee and the moment the moon finally broke through the storm clouds, Clara Hayes understood with the cold, clean certainty that had kept her alive through 14 winters, alone in these mountains, that what she was tracking was not a bear, and not a thief, and not even a brother gone bad. What she was tracking was a lie shaped like a man, a lie shaped like a woman, a lie shaped like a story about a monstrous grizzly in the Rockies, told in a town where nobody asked questions about dead bears. She tightened her grip on the Winchester. The fire popped. Ethan Cole breathed slow and even in his sleep, and did not know yet that the woman he had hired was already 4 steps ahead of him, and already beginning to suspect she was going to have to save his life from something far worse than the brother who had shot him. She watched the snow come down. She waited for dawn. The fire had burned down to coals by the time Clara shook him awake. "Mr. Cole, I'm up." "No, you ain't. You're asleep with your eyes open. Drink this." She put the tin cup in his hand, and he drank without asking what was in it, which was half coffee and half whiskey, and he came awake all the way by the second swallow. "What time?" "Near 4. Storm's slackening. We move before it finds its second wind." "Yes, ma'am." He started to rise, and she put her boot against his knee and sat him back down. "Before we move, you and I are going to have a conversation, Mr. Cole." "All right." "I need the truth of one thing. Just one. You lie to me now, I take your horse and ride home and keep the 600 for my trouble. Do you understand me? Yes, ma'am. When your wife walked out of your cabin with your brother, did she leave a note? He looked at her for a long moment. The fire made a small cracking sound. Somewhere up the slope, an elk called and did not call again. She left a ribbon. A ribbon, blue hair ribbon, on the table, next to the empty strongbox. Was that a goodbye or a message? I don't rightly know, Miss Hayes. Was the ribbon tied or loose? Tied in a bow. Then it was a goodbye. Women do not tie bows for men they mean to come back to. Ethan Cole set the tin cup down very carefully on the flat stone beside him. When he spoke again, his voice was the voice of a man who had been holding a door shut for 4 days and had just let it swing open. She packed her good dress. The green one I bought her in Helena. I only figured that out on the ride down to town. She took the dress and she left the ribbon, and she rode out with my brother, and she was not tied, Miss Hayes. She was not tied. No. You knew. I suspected. How? Her boot prints at the East Fork. She mounted on her own. A woman being carried off does not stand still long enough to find her stirrup. Her prints stood still. He put his face in his hands. He did not cry. Clara had seen grown men cry in the mountains, and this was not that. This was something colder. This was a man looking at a thing he had known for 4 days and refused to name, and now a stranger had named it for him, and the name was in the air between them, and could not be put back. I'm going to ask you a hard thing, she said. Ask. Do you still want to find her? Yes. Why? Because I need to hear her say it with her own mouth. I need her to stand in front of me and tell me she did it. I will not spend the rest of my life wondering if my brother put a gun to her head. And when she tells you, then I will know. And then what? Then I will ride down out of these mountains with you behind me. Miss Hayes and I will take her and my brother to the federal marshal in Missoula, and I will put every piece of it in front of a judge, and I will let the law do what the law does. I did not come to you to kill my own kin. I came to you because you are the only tracker in this country who does not drink, does not talk, and does not miss. Clara studied him a long moment. A lying man does not volunteer the marshal. A lying man does not volunteer the judge. All right, Mr. Cole. All right? All right, we ride. They broke camp in the blue dark. Clara saddled both horses because Ethan's shoulder had stiffened in the cold, and she did not want him tearing the stitches she had put in him. He did not fight her on it. He held the bridles and tightened the cinches with his one good hand, and did not say a word of thanks, which was the right thing, because a thank you between two people on a hunt like this would have sounded like a lie. An hour above the camp, she reined in hard. Off the horse. Ma'am, off, now, quiet. He swung down. She pointed 2 fingers at the snow at the edge of the trail. He crouched and looked. He looked at her. That's a boot print. Yes, it is. That is not Lucas's boot. No, it is not. Whose is that? That is a man who is tracking the same 2 people we are tracking, Mr. Cole, and he is maybe 6 hours ahead of us. Ethan's good hand went to the revolver on his hip before he thought about it going there. Who else knew? That is the question I have been asking myself for the last mile. Nobody else knew. Somebody knew. Who? Mr. Cole, think. Who did your brother owe money to? He went very still. Nobody that I... He stopped. Say it. There was a man in Butte, a card man. Lucas was in him for $600 last summer. Lucas swore he paid it off. Did he? I gave him the money to pay it off. I handed it to him in my own kitchen. Whose name? A man named Harlan Vance. And Harlan Vance has men who work for him. Yes. Who ride? Yes. Mr. Cole, we are not the only party hunting your brother. No. And the man ahead of us has a 6-hour lead and no wound in his shoulder, and no scruples at all about who ends up face down in a drift. No. Then we ride hard, and we ride quiet. And if I tell you to get down off that horse and into the trees, you do it before I finish the sentence. Do you hear me? I hear you. They rode. They rode harder than Clara liked to ride a horse in this country, in this weather. But the math of it had changed, and the math of it had teeth now. Somewhere ahead of them, a man who worked for a card sharp in Butte was closing on Lucas Cole and Emily Cole and $8,000 in silver. And that man did not care which brother had fired which bullet into whose back. That man cared about the silver. And a man who cared only about the silver was going to kill the two people Ethan Cole needed alive in front of a judge. Near mid-morning, she put up her fist, and Ethan drew up beside her. She pointed without speaking. He leaned forward in the saddle. There was blood in the snow. Not a lot. A trail of small spatter, the kind a man leaves who is bleeding from the hand or the arm. Not the kind a man leaves who is dying. It crossed the trail from the north, continued south along the track of the two horses they had been following, and disappeared around the shoulder of the ridge. That's not Lucas's blood, Ethan said. No, that's the blood of the man ahead of us. Somebody put a bullet in him, yesterday by the look of it. Lucas did that. Somebody did that. Could be Lucas. Could be your wife. Could be a third thing we haven't thought of yet. A third thing. Mr. Cole, I have been tracking this snow for half a day, and the snow is telling me a story with more people in it than you told me about. How many people? At least 4. Your brother, your wife, the man ahead of us, and one other. One other. A woman. He stared at her. A second woman. A second woman, smaller boot than your wife, walks pigeon-toed, came into this trail about 2 miles back from a side draw and has been walking beside Emily's horse ever since. Miss Hayes, I do not know any other woman in these mountains. Neither do I, Mr. Cole, but she is in my snow. They reached the Cutter cabin an hour past noon. Clara made them circle it wide before going in. She took the buckskin around the north side through the trees and came in low, and she made Ethan hold back 50 yards with the horses. She went the last 100 feet on her belly through crusted snow, Winchester cradled in her elbows, and she lay outside the door of the Cutter cabin for a full 4 minutes, listening before she let herself believe it was empty. It was empty. It had been empty for maybe a day. She waved Ethan in. Don't touch anything. Just walk where I walk. Yes, ma'am. Inside the stove was cold, but there was grease still soft in the skillet. A plate with crumbs. 2 cups. One of the cups had lip rouge on the rim. Clara looked at it and said nothing. A folded quilt on the cot, and underneath the quilt, the impression of 2 bodies. Ethan looked at the cot, and his jaw went tight. Mr. Cole? I see it. I'm sorry. Don't be. He walked a slow circle of the room. His hand kept going to the revolver and kept coming off it. Clara watched him. She had been afraid he would break here, and he did not break. He went quiet instead, a different kind of quiet than before, a quiet that had a decision in it. Miss Hayes? Yes, Mr. Cole. Is the silver here? No. You sure? Floor's been swept. Nothing's been dug up. No cash marks on the walls. If they stopped here for $8,000, they stopped for something else. They didn't leave it behind. They carried it on. They carried it on. Or they buried it somewhere up the line. Then we ride on. Yes. But first. She crossed to the stove and knelt down. On the floor beside it, half swept into the ash pile, there was a scrap of paper. She picked it up with 2 fingers like it might bite. It was the corner of a letter. Her handwriting small and careful and schoolmarm pretty. 4 words still visible. Tell Ethan the ribbon. Ethan read it over her shoulder. He made a sound. Not a word. Not a groan. A sound a man makes in his chest when he has been holding a thing too long and his body puts it down without asking him. She wrote it down, he said. Yes. She wrote down what to leave me. Yes. Miss Hayes. I know. She planned it. Yes, Mr. Cole, she planned it. He sat down on the edge of the cot where his wife and his brother had lain the night before last. He sat down, and he put his elbows on his knees, and he looked at the floor between his boots, and Clara saw his shoulders move once hard, and then go still. She gave him a minute. A minute was all she had to give. The man in front of them was 6 hours ahead and bleeding and angry, and Clara had begun to do the arithmetic of what a man like that did when he caught Lucas and Emily alone in a pass with $8,000 in silver, and the arithmetic did not favor anyone she had been paid to bring home alive. "Mr. Cole." "Give me 1 more minute, Miss Hayes." "I cannot give you 1 more minute. I can give you 30 seconds, and then I am going to put you back on that horse." He nodded into his hands. 30 seconds. She counted it out in her head. At 29, he stood up. At 30, he walked past her to the door. She followed him out without a word, and they mounted and they rode. Above the Cutter cabin, the trail broke into 3. Clara swung down and walked each of them 50 yards with her eyes on the ground. The storm had covered everything with a half-inch of fresh powder, and underneath it, the old tracks were hardening into ice, and a lesser tracker would have lost the trail entirely and turned back. Clara did not turn back. She read the crust, and she read the wind patterns in the drifts, and she came back to her horse and pointed up the center fork. "They went that way, all of them. Your brother, your wife, the man ahead of us, and the second woman. All 4. All 4, within maybe 2 hours of each other. He's catching up to them. He's almost on them. If he hasn't already caught them by nightfall, he'll catch them by dawn tomorrow. Then we ride through the night." "No, we do not." "Miss Hayes." "Mr. Cole, if we ride through the night, we lose the horses. If we lose the horses in this country in this weather, we die, and we do not help anybody. We ride until last light. We make cold camp. We move at first light. We will catch him, and we will catch them. I did not come out here to die in a snowdrift because a man in Butte lost patience." He did not argue. She had not thought he would. They rode until the blue hour before full dark. Twice more Clara swung down to read the snow. Twice more she climbed back up and said nothing, because both times what she had read did not bear repeating to a man whose stitches were already beginning to weep blood again through his shirt. The second woman had caught up to Emily's horse. They had stood together for some time in a flat place above a creek. The smaller boots had circled the larger ones twice and then walked back to her own horse, like a woman checking on a sister or a partner. Clara was beginning to have an idea about the second woman that she did not like and did not want to speak out loud until she had more than an idea. They made cold camp under a stand of firs in the lee of a granite shoulder. No fire, cold jerky and colder biscuits. Clara made Ethan eat a double portion, and she watched him eat it. "Miss Hayes." "Yes, Mr. Cole." "How many people do you think my wife has been talking to? Before today, I would have said 2. Your brother and you. After today, I would say she has been talking to more people than you know the names of." "How long?" "How long what?" "How long has she been planning this?" "Mr. Cole, I am not a woman who guesses at other women's plans, but a blue ribbon tied in a bow and a letter with instructions in it, and a second woman already waiting in a draw above a frozen creek, is not a plan that was made in a week." "How long?" "Months, maybe a year." He was quiet a long time. "I built her a kitchen last spring, hauled every board up from Missoula myself. She said it was the prettiest kitchen in the valley." She may have meant it, Mr. Cole. A woman can mean a kind word about a kitchen and still be planning what she was planning. Those are not the same room in a woman's house. He almost laughed. It came out wrong, but it came out. "You talk different when you want to." "I talk how I need to." "Thank you, Miss Hayes. Don't thank me yet. I haven't done anything yet but ride a horse and read some snow." "You listened." "I charge for that too." That time the laugh came out right. It was small and tired, and it died fast, but it was a laugh, and Clara Hayes allowed herself to hear it, and to put it away in a place inside her that she had not opened in a long time. She took first watch again. He protested. She did not argue. She simply sat down with the Winchester across her knees and waited him out, and inside 10 minutes he was asleep with his back against a tree and his good hand on his revolver. She watched the dark. Somewhere up the center fork, 6 hours ahead of them, a man who worked for Harlan Vance, was closing on Lucas Cole. Somewhere beyond him, Lucas Cole and Emily Cole were riding toward a meeting place they had chosen, and a second woman was riding with them, and $8,000 in silver was riding with all three. And somewhere underneath all of it was a story Ethan Cole had not been told yet. A story Clara was beginning to see the shape of, the way a tracker begins to see the shape of an animal through brush, not the animal itself, but the bending of the branches where the animal has passed. The shape of this one was not a man, and it was not a bear. It was a woman walking pigeon-toed through fresh snow who had already been here before any of them. Clara tightened her grip on the rifle. She watched the dark, and the dark watched her back, and neither of them blinked. Clara woke Ethan 2 hours before dawn. "Mr. Cole." "I'm awake." "No coffee this morning, no fire. We ride cold." "Yes, ma'am." "And we ride off the trail." He was on his feet before she finished speaking. "Off the trail, why?" "Because the man from Butte is not 6 hours ahead of us anymore." "Where is he?" "He's behind us." Ethan stopped buckling his belt. "Say that again, Miss Hayes." "A rider cut north off the main trail yesterday afternoon, circled a wide ring through the lodge poles, and came back onto the ridge above this camp about an hour ago. He is sitting up there right now. I saw the breath of his horse against the moon. He knows we're here. He has known we were here since the Cutter cabin. He let us pass him on purpose. He wants to follow us in to Lucas and your wife, because we can read snow and he cannot, and then he wants to shoot the three of you and ride off with the silver. The three of us. You, your brother, your wife. He does not need witnesses, Mr. Cole, and he does not know I exist. Or if he does, he thinks I am a hired hand who will take money to walk away." "Would you?" "Mr. Cole, this is not a morning to ask me questions like that." "No, ma'am." They saddled in the dark. Clara led the buckskin by the bridle and made Ethan lead his bay, and she walked them out through the trees on the downslope side of the camp, every step chosen against rock and against old wind crust that would not betray them. When they were a full quarter-mile out, she swung up into the saddle, and Ethan swung up after her, and she held a finger to her lips and pointed uphill cross-slope at an angle the man on the ridge would not expect. They rode for an hour before either of them spoke. "Miss Hayes." "Yes, Mr. Cole." "You just flanked him." "I did." "So now we are behind the man who was behind us." "That is correct." "How far behind?" "Half a mile, maybe less. And he still thinks he is behind us, which is the only advantage we are going to get today." "What do we do with it?" "We use it to get to your brother first." "And when we do?" "When we do, Mr. Cole, you are going to do exactly what I tell you to do, and you are not going to draw that revolver unless I put a hand on your arm and nod, because the man from Butte is going to arrive 3 minutes behind us, and we need your brother and your wife talking before he does. The minute they stop talking, we lose the marshal in Missoula, and we lose the judge, and we lose the whole reason we rode out here." "Understood." "Say it back to me." "I do not draw unless you nod." "Good." They rode. The sky above the ridges began to go pale along the eastern rim, and Clara picked up the pace as far as the snow would allow, because dawn light in this country was a thing that could kill you if you were in the wrong place in it. At the top of a long ridge, she reined in hard, held up a fist, swung down without a sound, and went forward on foot with the Winchester. She was back inside 2 minutes. "Mr. Cole, come see." He tied the bay to a deadfall and followed her up on his belly the last 30 feet. She pointed down into the draw below them. There was a man face down in the snow. He was not moving. He had not been moving for a while. A revolver lay near his right hand. His horse was gone. There was a dark fan of blood around his head, and his coat had been pulled open and searched. "Is that? That is the man from Butte. You said he was on the ridge behind us." "That is a different man from Butte." Ethan turned his head and looked at her. "A different man." "Harlan Vance sent 2 of them, Mr. Cole. That is the first one. He caught Lucas and your wife, or he caught somebody, and somebody put a bullet in his face and took his horse and searched his pockets and rode on. The second one is the one we flanked this morning. The second one does not yet know his partner is dead down here in this draw. Who shot him? I do not know yet. Could it have been Lucas? Could have been. Could have been your wife. Could have been the second woman. The snow in the draw has been walked over too many times for me to tell you which one pulled the trigger. But whoever did it is a cold hand, Mr. Cole. That man was shot from 6 feet away, and he was shot in the face, and his own gun never cleared the leather. Somebody he knew. Somebody he was standing close to. Somebody he was not expecting a bullet from. A woman. Maybe. Emily. Maybe. Or the other one. Ethan was quiet a long moment. Miss Hayes, I need to tell you something. Tell me while we ride. Now. Mr. Cole. Now, Miss Hayes. There was a cousin. Clara went very still on her belly in the snow. Say that again? Emily had a cousin. Came to stay with us the summer before last. From St. Louis. Stayed 6 weeks. Rode out on the stage at the end of August. Her name was Rose. Rose Calder. A small woman. Small, dark hair. Walked, pigeon-toed. Yes. Mr. Cole. Yes, Miss Hayes. Is Rose Calder the kind of woman who would ride 400 miles back to a homestead in Montana and wait 2 years to help her cousin steal $8,000 in silver from that cousin's husband? I did not think she was. I liked her. She helped Emily put up pears. Mr. Cole, a woman who puts up pears with her cousin, is also a woman who can plan for 2 winters what she is going to do in the third. Yes, she is your second woman. Yes. All right. Miss Hayes, I am sorry. For what? For hiring you into a thing that has more people in it than I knew. Mr. Cole, every job has more people in it than the man who hires me knows. That is why he hires me. Get on your horse. They rode. Clara pushed the pace now. The math had changed again, and the math had a new column in it, because Rose Calder meant this had been planned not for a year, but for 2. And a plan that had been breathing in a quiet cabin for 2 winters did not come apart easily, and did not leave witnesses when it came apart. Clara had begun to suspect that Lucas Cole was going to be as surprised as Ethan was when the thing finally cracked open. She had begun to suspect that Lucas Cole had been handled the way a woman handles a lamp on a dark shelf, lit and carried, and eventually blown out. Near mid-morning, she saw the smoke. A thin line of it, no thicker than a piece of yarn, rising above the lodge poles 2 ridges over. A cook fire. A small one. A careful one. Mr. Cole? I see it. How far? Mile, maybe a little more. That is your brother. Maybe. That is somebody who thinks he is not being followed. A man who thinks he is being followed does not build a fire. Unless he is waiting. Unless he is waiting, yes. Miss Hayes, I have been thinking about something. Think faster. We have a mile. If Emily planned this with Rose Calder for 2 years, and if Emily shot the man from Butte last night, then Emily did not need my brother for any part of this except one. Go on. She needed somebody she could leave a body behind. Yes, Mr. Cole. She is going to kill him. Yes. At that fire. Maybe at that fire, maybe tonight, but yes. Then we have to get there first. We are getting there first. Ride quiet. No sound off those bits. They covered the last mile in silence. Clara took them down off the ridge and through a creek bottom where the willow brush was thick enough to hide a horse and a man. And she let the buckskin pick her own way through the ice because the buckskin had ice sense that Clara herself did not have. At the head of the draw, she swung down, tied off, and motioned Ethan to do the same. From here we go on foot. I will go first. You will go 10 yards behind me. If I raise my hand, you stop. If I drop, you drop. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Cole. Yes, Miss Hayes. You are about to see your wife. You are about to hear her voice. You will want to speak. You will not. You will let me speak. Do you understand what I am telling you? I understand. Swear it to me. I swear it. They went forward. Clara smelled the fire before she saw it. Coffee, bacon, wood smoke. The smell of people who believed they had already won. She went the last 20 yards on her belly and put the Winchester out in front of her, through a screen of young fir, and Ethan Cole slid up on her left and did the same with his revolver. At the fire, there were 3 people. Lucas Cole sat on a log with his back to them. Clara knew it was Lucas because Ethan's whole body tightened beside her at the sight of the man's shoulders. Across the fire from Lucas sat a woman in a dark coat, auburn hair pinned up under a wool hat. Her face was turned 3/4 away, but Clara did not need to see more than that to know she was looking at Emily Cole. Between them standing was Rose Calder. Rose was holding a coffee pot. She was smiling. She was also holding in her other hand, held low against the fold of her skirt, where Lucas could not see it, a small pistol. Clara put her lips next to Ethan's ear. "Do not move. I see it. Do not breathe." He did not breathe. Rose poured coffee into Lucas's tin cup. Lucas lifted the cup and said something Clara could not hear, and Emily laughed a short, warm laugh, and Rose stepped around behind Lucas like a woman topping off the pot for a second cup, and the pistol came up almost lazily to the back of Lucas Cole's head. Clara rose onto one knee, and her voice cut the clearing like a whip. "Rose Calder, put it down." Everything stopped. Rose did not drop the pistol. Rose did not even turn all the way around. She turned her head. Just her head. Her eyes found Clara over the sights of the Winchester, and they did not widen. They sharpened. "Ma'am," Rose said quite pleasantly. "I do not know you." "My name is Clara Hayes. I track for a living. Put the pistol down." "I think not." Rose. That was Emily. Emily had come to her feet. Her face had gone the color of old milk. She was looking past Clara at Ethan, who had come up on one knee beside Clara, with his revolver leveled. "Ethan?" "Emily." "Ethan, you are alive." "I am alive. Sit down, Emily." "Ethan." "Sit down." Lucas Cole had not moved from the log. He had gone rigid. He had felt the pistol behind his head before Clara called out, and he was sitting very still now, like a man who had just realized he was the 4th person in a conversation he had thought was between 3. "Rose," Lucas said without turning. "Hush, Lucas." "Rose, is there a pistol behind my head?" "Hush, Emily." Lucas's voice had changed. The warmth had drained out of it like water from a cracked bucket. "Emily, is there a pistol behind my head?" Emily did not answer him. Emily was looking at Ethan. "Ethan, listen to me." "I have been listening to you for 11 years, Emily." "Ethan, it was not." "Emily, do not. I rode 3 days with a hole in my back to hear you say it with your mouth, and now you are going to say it with your mouth, and then I am going to take you down to a marshal in Missoula. Do you understand me?" "Ethan." "Say it, Emily." Rose Calder smiled. She smiled a small, tired smile like a schoolmarm watching children work out a sum. "Emily, honey." Rose. "Emily, put your hand in your coat pocket." Rose. "Put your hand in your pocket, Emily. Mr. Cole has not come alone. We have been generous long enough." And Emily Cole's hand moved toward her coat pocket. Clara's voice went flat and cold as riverstone. "Mrs. Cole, if your hand goes into that pocket, I put a bullet through your wrist. I will not kill you. I need you alive for a judge. But I will ruin that hand for the rest of your life, and you will never hold a coffee cup with it again. Do you hear me?" Emily's hand stopped. "Rose," Emily said, and her voice had gone high and thin. "Rose, she means it." "She means it. Yes, honey." "Rose, what do we do?" Rose Calder looked at Clara across the fire. The pistol was still at the back of Lucas Cole's skull. Lucas was breathing through his teeth. "Miss Hayes," Rose said. "Miss Calder." "You are a professional." "I am." "So am I, in my own small way." "I see that. Then let us speak plainly. The silver is already gone from this clearing. It was gone before Lucas sat down. There are 2 horses in the trees behind me, and neither of them is carrying $8,000 in anything. If you fire that rifle, Mr. Cole's brother dies before the echo comes back off that ridge. If you do not fire it, I walk out of this clearing, and I leave you Emily and Lucas, and you ride them both down to your marshal, and you collect your fee. That is an honest trade." "Rose, no," Emily began. "Hush, honey." "Rose, you can't leave me." "Hush, Emily." "Miss Hayes, do we have a trade?" Clara did not lower the Winchester. "Miss Calder, there is a man up on the ridge behind me who works for Harlan Vance in Butte. His partner is lying dead in a draw 3 miles south of here with a bullet in his face. I believe you put it there. I will let the judge in Missoula decide if I am right. But what I will tell you for no charge is that the man on the ridge is going to be down here in the next hour. He is tracking the smoke of your fire. He is not going to make you a trade. He is going to kill all 4 of you and put the silver on his own horse. So you have a choice, Miss Calder. You can put that pistol down and ride down the mountain with me and Mr. Cole, and you can take your chances with a judge. Or you can pull that trigger and run, and the man on the ridge will run you down before dark." Rose Calder's eyes flickered. Just once, just for half a heartbeat. It was enough. Clara had seen it in animals, and she had seen it in men, and she saw it now in a small woman from St. Louis who had planned a thing for 2 winters and had just been told 1 hour before the end of it that there was a piece on the board she had not known about. "The second man is here. The second man is here, Miss Calder. You are not lying." "I do not have time to lie, Miss Calder." Rose Calder did something then that Clara would remember for the rest of her life. She lowered the pistol. Not all the way. Not to the ground. She lowered it to her side, and she looked at Emily, and she looked at Lucas on the log, who was still not breathing right, and she looked at Ethan Cole across the fire from her, and she said quite softly, "Well, that is a pity." Then she turned and she ran. She ran for the trees behind her for the horses. She was fast. She was very fast. Clara did not shoot. Ethan half rose beside her. "Miss Hayes, let her go." "Let her go, Mr. Cole. She is running into the man on the ridge. He will do our work for us. Get Lucas. Get Emily. Get them on their feet and get them tied and get them to the horses. We have 15 minutes before that man comes down this slope, and I want to be gone out of this clearing before he gets here." Lucas Cole turned on the log at last. His face was gray. He looked at his brother across the fire and his mouth worked and nothing came out of it for a long second. "Ethan." "Lucas." "Ethan. Lucas. You put a bullet in my back." "Ethan." "Shut your mouth, Lucas. Put your hands behind you." Lucas Cole put his hands behind him. Clara moved. She took Emily Cole by the wrist, turned her and tied her wrists with the short length of rawhide she carried at her belt for exactly this purpose. Emily did not fight. Emily was weeping now small silent tears that Clara did not trust for a single instant. Ethan tied his brother with a hand that did not shake. From somewhere up on the ridge above them, very far off but very clear. In the cold air, a single pistol shot cracked out across the mountains. Then a second shot. Then silence. Clara did not look up. She did not need to. "Mount them," she said. "We ride." They put Lucas on his own horse and Emily on hers, and Clara ran a second length of rawhide from wrist to saddle horn. On each of them pulled it tight enough to hold and loose enough to keep the blood in their hands, and she did not say a word while she worked. Ethan kicked snow over the fire until the last coal died. He did it with a hand that was steady now, in a way it had not been steady at the cabin, or at the cutter, or anywhere since. "Miss Hayes?" "Yes, Mr. Cole." "Where?" "South, straight down the creek bed. We ride in the water where the water is open, and we ride on the crust where it is not. We are going to cut 2 miles off the back trail, and we are going to lose any man who comes looking for us in the draw above. And if Rose Calder is not dead up there, then she will be wishing she was Mr. Cole. Mount up." Lucas Cole spoke for the first time as Clara checked the cinch on his horse. "Ma'am?" "Mr. Cole. The other one." "Ma'am, I did not—" "Mr. Cole, I am going to stop you there. I do not take confessions on horseback, and I do not want to hear yours. You tell your story to a marshal. You tell it to a judge. You do not tell it to me. Are we clear?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Ride." They moved. Clara took point and put Ethan at the rear with the Winchester across his saddle, and she put the two prisoners in the middle, where she could see them both without turning her head. The creek bed ran shallow and icy, and the buckskin picked her way through it, like she had been bred for it, which in fact she had, and Clara let her horse do the work and kept her ears on the ridge behind them. For 20 minutes, there was nothing up there but wind. Then very faint, the sound of a single horse running hard. One rider, coming down off the ridge at an angle that would cross their trail in maybe a mile. "Mr. Cole," she said, not turning. "We have company." "I hear him." One horse, running reckless. That is a man who has just killed something and is now riding to kill something else. The second Vance man. The second Vance man, yes. What do we do? We get off this creek, now. She swung the buckskin up the south bank and into a stand of aspens, where the leaves had all come down, and the trunks were close and gray and would break the lines of 4 horses into a confusion no hurried eye would untangle. She got them 50 yards into the trees and reined in and swung down. "Off. Quiet. Hands on the muzzles. Any horse makes a sound, I cut the tie and let it run, and your prisoner rides with me on the buckskin and does not like it. Do you hear?" "I hear." Ethan. Emily and Lucas slid down and stood with their backs against the trunks of 2 aspens' wrists still tied to the rawhide, and Clara put her gloved hand over the buckskin's nose, and Ethan put his over his bay's, and Lucas put his tied hands up against his own horse's jaw as best he could, and Emily, after a long second, in which Clara thought she might try something, did the same. The rider came through at a gallop on the creek bed 50 yards below them. A big man on a big black horse, a rifle across his pommel, a second revolver on his off hip. His face was half wrapped in a dark scarf against the cold, and the part Clara could see above the scarf was the face of a man who had spent his whole life not caring whose name was written on a coin once it was in his pocket. He did not look up into the aspens. He rode past at speed and took the creek south around the next bend and was gone. Clara let out a breath she had been holding for a full minute. "That is a mean one," she said softly. "He did not see us. He did not see us. He will see our tracks at the bottom of the creek where we came out. He will know we came off the water into trees. He will come back." "How long?" 20 minutes, 30 if the Almighty loves us today. Does the Almighty love us today? "Mr. Cole, I stopped asking that question a long time ago. Mount up." They mounted. She took them east out of the aspens, at a hard trot straight across the contour of the slope, through a thicket of chokecherry that tore at their coats, and would leave a trail any child could follow, and she did not slow for it. She pushed through the chokecherry and out onto a bench of open ground that sloped down toward a long, narrow gap between 2 granite walls, a pass Clara had been in once before 11 years ago, with her brother James, the winter he had tried to teach her how to die well, and had succeeded only in teaching her how to live mean. "That pass," Ethan said behind her. "I know it. It is a killing ground, Miss Hayes. There is no cover in there." "I know it, Mr. Cole. That is the point." "Ma'am, he is a man who hunts for money. He is not a man who hunts because he loves it. He is going to come through that pass because he has to catch us before we get to the marshal, and he is going to come through it fast, and he is going to come through it expecting 4 frightened people on tired horses. He is not going to be expecting me in the rocks above it with a Winchester. You are going to ambush him. I am going to ask him to stand down. If he chooses not to stand down, then yes, Mr. Cole, I am going to ambush him. But it will be his choice and not mine." Ethan was quiet a moment. "Miss Hayes." "Yes. I have shot men. In the war. Not many, but enough to know what it costs. And I will stand in those rocks with you if you want me there. I want you down on the pass floor with your brother and your wife and both horses, and I want you to ride into that pass slow enough for him to see you and fast enough that he thinks you are trying to run. You are my bait, Mr. Cole. I need a man I can trust for bait." "All right. Do not look up. Do not slow down. When he fires the first shot, which he will, you go flat on the neck of your horse, and you ride forward, and you do not stop until you are out the south end of that pass. And if he shoots me before you can shoot him, then I will have been wrong about where he sets up, and I will have to live with it. But I will not be wrong, Mr. Cole. I have been in that pass before." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." She put him on the trail with Lucas and Emily ahead of him and gave him a last look. "Mr. Cole." "Yes, Miss Hayes. If I do not come down off that rock in 20 minutes, you ride. You ride all the way to Missoula. You put these two in front of the federal marshal. You tell him everything we have said to each other from the first knock on my door. You do not come back for me." "Miss Hayes." "Say it." "I will ride." "Good man." She turned the buckskin up the slope and was gone into the rocks inside a minute. Clara had been in high country alone most of her life, and she knew the one true thing about a sniper's perch, which was that you picked the place the other man would look last. Most men looked up. She went down. She tied the buckskin in a fold of rock below the lip of the pass, and she came up to her firing position from beneath, and she settled in behind a granite shoulder with the Winchester braced and her breath slowed to the rhythm she had learned from her father before her 10th birthday, 3 beats in 4 beats out, until her pulse fell below her gun hand and stayed there. Down in the pass, Ethan rode through at a steady working trot with Lucas ahead of him and Emily between them. The 3 horses moved in single file. Ethan's shoulders stayed square. He did not look up. He was a good man with a bad wound and a worse morning behind him, and he rode like a man who had decided that the last thing he was going to do wrong in this life was betray the trust of a woman who had stitched him up in her own kitchen. From the north end of the pass came the sound of a horse being pushed hard. Clara did not move. The second Vance man came around the corner into the pass at a full gallop, rifle up, scarf flying. He saw the 3 horses ahead of him, and he did exactly what Clara had known he would do. He reined into a hard trot, brought the rifle down to his shoulder, and steadied his aim on the back of the man at the rear of the line, which was Ethan Cole. Clara took a breath. "Mister, you in the black scarf, drop the rifle." Her voice carried across the rock of the pass like a stone dropped in a deep well. The man froze. He did not turn his head. He turned his eyes. He was looking for her in the high rocks on the east wall, which was where a man would expect a shooter to be. His eyes slid up the east wall and did not find her because she was on the west wall and 15 feet below the lip instead of above it. "Drop the rifle. I will not ask a second time." "Woman," he said. He said it like it answered something for him. "Drop the rifle." "Woman, I got $100 in my pocket says I ride out of this pass with that silver." "The silver is not on these horses." That got him. His eyes flickered for just a second. The same flicker she had seen in Rose Calder's eyes an hour before, and it told her the same thing. He had not known. He had been riding on the assumption he had ridden in on. He had not yet done the arithmetic that Clara had already finished. "You are lying. Mr. A woman in the snow does not lie to a man with a rifle. It is not a healthy habit. The silver was moved off these horses this morning before we reached the fire. Your partner in Butte bet on the wrong string of pack animals. The woman you are looking for is named Rose Calder, and she had the silver on a mule 3 miles west of here at dawn, and I expect she is now across the divide and riding for the railhead at Hope." Rose Calder. Rose is in St. Louis. Rose has not been in St. Louis for 3 days, mister. Rose has been riding with these 2 people in front of you. Rose is the one who shot your partner in the face yesterday evening and left him in a draw with no horse and empty pockets. Rose is the one who has your silver, not these people. These people are worth nothing to you. They are worth a reward from a marshal to me, and I am taking them to that marshal. You can ride south and try to cut Rose off at Hope, or you can ride into my rifle. Those are your choices." He sat on the black horse and did not move. She could see him thinking. A man like that did not think fast, but a man like that did not need to think fast. He needed to think correctly once about whether the woman behind the voice was alone or whether she was not. "How many of you?" he said. "Enough, mister." "1. You are 1. Mister, I am going to count to 3. On 3, I am going to put a bullet through your right shoulder. I am not going to kill you. I am going to ruin your shoulder, and you are going to lose your rifle, and then I am going to come down off this rock, and I am going to take your revolver and your horse, and I am going to leave you in this pass with a canteen and your life, and you are going to walk out of here and tell Harlan Vance in Butte that his silver rode west on a mule with a small woman in a black coat. Do you hear me? 1, 2. He moved on, too. He brought the rifle up and around faster than she had expected, and he fired into the rocks on the east wall, which was where he had decided her voice had been coming from. He was half right. Her voice had been bouncing off the east wall. She was not on the east wall. Clara's Winchester cracked once. The big man went off the black horse like a sack going off a wagon bed. He hit the snow of the pass on his right side, and his rifle skidded away from his hand. He rolled once and came up on his knees, and his left hand went for the revolver on his off hip, and Clara's Winchester cracked a second time. The revolver jumped out of his hand and spun into the snow. He screamed. It was a high, thin scream, the scream of a man who had been hit twice in places that would take a year to heal, and had understood at last that the woman he was fighting was not missing her shots, she was choosing them. Mister? God. Mister, listen to me. Woman, I told you I was not going to kill you. I am a woman of my word. Sit still. She came down off the rock. She came down the way she had come up through the fold below the lip, and when she stepped out onto the floor of the pass, she had the Winchester levered and leveled at his chest, and he was kneeling in the snow with his hands empty, and his shoulder running red through his coat. Ethan, she called, not loud, knowing the pass would carry it. Come back. Coming. Ethan rode back up the pass at a slow trot, Lucas and Emily behind him at the end of their ropes, and he swung down beside Clara and looked at the big kneeling man and said nothing. Mr. Cole, tie him. Yes, ma'am. Ethan tied the big man's hands behind his back with a length of the same rawhide Clara had used on Lucas and Emily, and the big man let him, because the big man's right arm would not move, and his left hand was curled like a bird's claw around the wound in his palm. Clara crouched in front of him. Mister, what is your name? Pike. Mr. Pike, you are going to ride with us to Missoula. You are going to tell the federal marshal there that Harlan Vance sent you and a man named what? Doyle. That Harlan Vance sent you and Mr. Doyle to ride down Lucas Cole. You are going to tell him that Miss Rose Calder shot Mr. Doyle dead in a draw south of the Cutter cabin. You are going to tell him everything you know about Harlan Vance's gambling house in Butte. And in exchange, I am not going to put a third bullet in you today, and you are going to live, and maybe the marshal will trade your testimony for some years off the rope. Do you hear me? I hear. Good. She stood up. Her legs were steadier than she had expected. Her hands were steadier than her legs. She looked at Ethan Cole across the kneeling body of Pike, and she saw that his eyes had changed. Not softened, not hardened, something else. The eyes of a man who had watched a thing and understood that he had been standing beside it all along without knowing what it was. Miss Hayes. Mr. Cole. You did not kill him. No. You could have. Yes. Most would have. Most would have, Mr. Cole. I am not most. No, ma'am, you are not. He turned away from her then to check the rawhide on his brother's wrists, and Clara was grateful for it, because there had been something in his face she did not have a name for yet, and did not want to learn the name of in the middle of a mountain pass with a wounded man bleeding into the snow at her feet. Emily Cole was watching her from the back of her horse. Emily's face had changed too. The weeping had stopped. Something harder and more honest had come up underneath the weeping, and was sitting in her eyes now looking out. It was the face of a woman who had just learned that the piece she had moved for 2 winters was not the piece that had taken the board, and Clara met her look for a long second and said nothing at all. Mount up, Clara said to no one in particular. All of you. We ride for Missoula. We ride until I say we do not. They mounted. Pike mounted last with Ethan's help, because Pike could not mount with one ruined shoulder and one ruined hand, and Clara was not going to help him. 4 prisoners now, 4 horses. 3 days of riding if the weather held. 2.5 if the Almighty had developed an interest in the matter since morning. Clara Hayes took the lead out of the pass and did not look back at the blood in the snow behind her, because blood in the snow behind her had never once helped her get anywhere alive, and she had a long way yet to go. They rode out of the pass into a sky that had finally stopped giving snow, and Clara put them at a steady working trot that the horses could hold for hours, and the wounded men could suffer for only as long as she needed them to. Pike rode slumped over his pommel with his tied hands resting on the horn. Lucas rode with his head down and his mouth shut. Emily rode with her chin up and her eyes on the back of Clara's coat, and Ethan rode drag Winchester across his thighs, watching their back trail for the one person who had not yet been accounted for. Rose Calder was still out there somewhere with $8,000 in silver and 1 pistol and a head start that Clara had given her on purpose. Miss Hayes. Mr. Cole. You let her run. I let her run. Why? Because I had 3 prisoners in a clearing and 1 rifle, and because a woman who runs into a man hunting her is a woman who does my work for me, and because the silver on a mule does not move faster than a rider on a good horse. She will be caught. Maybe not today, maybe not by me, but she will be caught. How do you know? Mr. Cole, a woman who plans a thing for 2 winters has not planned for the 3rd winter. Rose Calder planned to kill your brother at that fire. She planned to ride out of there with your wife and the silver and split it in some town down the line. She did not plan to be alone on a mule at a railhead with a dead man in Butte looking for her. She is going to make a mistake inside 7 days, and a telegraph operator or a ticket clerk or a hotel man is going to notice it, and a marshal is going to ride out and pick her up. I have seen it happen 20 times. And the silver. The silver will be on her when they take her. She will not let go of it. That is the tell of a woman like that. She has carried it in her head for 2 years, and she will not put it down now. Ethan was quiet a while. You have thought about this kind of woman before. I have met this kind of woman before, Mr. Cole. In the mountains. In the mountains, in the towns, everywhere. They are not rare. They are only rare in the stories men tell about women. He did not answer that. She did not expect him to. They camped that night on the south side of the divide in a cold hollow out of the wind, and Clara built the fire herself and cooked what she had, and she fed the 4 prisoners the same as she fed Ethan and herself, because a hungry prisoner was a prisoner who would try something on the 3rd day, and she did not intend to give any of them a reason. Emily Cole spoke to her for the first time that night across the coals. Miss Hayes. Mrs. Cole. Will they hang me? Clara did not look up from the tin plate in her lap. That is not my business to know, Mrs. Cole. That is between you and the judge in Missoula. I do not decide who hangs. I decide who rides down off the mountain alive. Miss Hayes, I did not kill anyone. Mrs. Cole, I did not ask you what you did and did not do. Rose shot the man. Rose shot Mr. Doyle, not me. Tell that to the judge. Lucas did not know. Lucas thought it was all his idea. Rose put it in his head. She put it in his head over 2 summers, and he thought he was the one who had decided it. He was not. Clara lifted her eyes. Mrs. Cole. Yes, Miss Hayes. I am going to tell you something one time, and I am only going to tell you because we have another 2 days to ride together, and I do not want to ride with a woman who is spinning a new story every hour. Yes, ma'am. You left the ribbon. You packed the green dress. You stood at the East Fork and mounted your own horse. You rode north of your own will. A woman does not do those 3 things for a cousin she has not seen in 2 summers unless she has wanted to do them for longer than that. You may not have pulled a trigger. But you loaded the gun, Mrs. Cole. You loaded every gun in this mess. Your husband did not know your cousin was in the country. Your husband did not know there was a man in Butte. You knew both. You are not the piece Rose Calder moved on a board. You were the hand that moved her. Now keep your mouth shut and eat your supper. That is the last kindness I am going to do you. Emily Cole looked at her across the fire a long moment. Her eyes were dry now. Whatever had been in them that afternoon had gone out like a candle. Yes, ma'am. Ethan did not look up from his plate. He ate his supper slow and clean, and Clara saw his jaw work once, and that was all, and she left him alone with it, because a man who has just heard his wife convicted by a tracker across a cook fire does not want anybody's hand on his shoulder at that moment. Or if he does, it is not the hand of the woman who just spoke. They rode the next day and the day after through country that slowly came down out of the high snow and into open valleys, where the creeks were only frozen at the banks and the cottonwoods along them still held some of their yellow leaves. Pike's shoulder ran a fever the second night, and Clara bled it and wrapped it and kept him alive, because a prisoner who died on the trail was a prisoner who told the judge nothing, and Pike had things to tell a judge about Harlan Vance that would be useful to more people than Clara cared to name. On the morning of the third day, they came down out of the last pass into the Missoula Valley, and Clara saw the spires of the town below them, and the rail line cutting east and west, and the smoke of 100 stoves rising straight in the cold air, and she reined in the buckskin on a shoulder of the trail, and sat looking down at it. Ethan rode up beside her. "Miss Hayes." "Mr. Cole." "You did it. We are not down yet. Plenty of country between here and the marshal's office for a horse to break a leg. You did it." "Yes. All right, I did it." He was quiet a beat. "Miss Hayes, before we ride down into that town." "Yes. I want to say something to you, and I want you to let me say it without telling me I am being a fool." "I will try, Mr. Cole. I hired a tracker 4 days ago in a one-room cabin. I was half dead, and I was lying about the reason I was there. I have been lied to by my wife for 2 years, and by my brother for longer than that, and by a woman named Rose Calder, who I liked, and who put up pears in my kitchen. I am done with lying, and I am done with being lied to. I do not have the strength for it anymore, so I am going to say to you the most straight-tongued thing I have said in 4 days, and you can do with it what you want. Say it, Mr. Cole." "I trust you." "That is a small thing to say, Mr. Cole." "No, ma'am. For me today, it is the biggest thing in the world." She looked at him. She did not answer at once. She had been alone in one form or another since she was 14 years old, and she had built her life on the understanding that the word trust was a word other people used with each other in houses she did not live in. And now here was a man in a bloody coat on a tired bay, looking at her in the cold light above Missoula, and giving her that word like a coin laid flat on a table. "Mr. Cole?" "Yes, Miss Hayes. I am going to take us down into that town. I am going to put these 4 in front of the federal marshal. I am going to tell him everything I saw and everything I read in the snow. I am going to collect the fee you owe me, and I am going to sit in that marshal's office until Rose Calder is caught, and that silver is back in a lockbox with your name on it. Then we are going to have this conversation again, you and I, and not before, because I do not take the word trust off a man who is still bleeding through his shirt and standing in front of his wife in handcuffs. That is not a fair time to take it. Do you understand me?" "I understand." "Good." "Yes, ma'am." "Ride." They rode down into Missoula. The federal marshal was a man named Hollister, graying at the temples, with reading spectacles pushed up on his forehead and ink on his right sleeve. Clara had worked with him twice before, once bringing down a horse thief from the Bitterroot, and once finding a lost child in the Swan, and he had paid her on time both times, and had not once called her by anything but Miss Hayes. He took one look at her coming through his office door, with 4 tied prisoners behind her, and a man in a bloody coat behind them, and he pushed the spectacles down his nose and said, "Miss Hayes, I had a feeling it was going to be a Thursday. Marshal, sit down, all of you. Somebody get Dr. Lowell. Miss Hayes, that man there is gray in the face. He is shot in the shoulder. He is a Vance man out of Butte. Is he now? His partner is dead in a draw south of the Cutter cabin, with a bullet in his face that was put there by a woman named Rose Calder, who is currently running toward the railhead at Hope with $8,000 in silver on a pack mule. I would telegraph ahead if I were you, Marshal. She has maybe an 18-hour start. 8,000 in silver. 8,000 in silver. Miss Hayes. Yes, Marshal. You brought me a Thursday and a half. I did, sir. He turned to the young deputy by the door. Telegraph Hope. Telegraph Bonner. Telegraph every railhead this side of the divide. Description of a small dark-haired woman in a black coat with a pack mule and a pistol. Hold her on suspicion of murder and theft. Author of warrant this office. Go." The deputy went. Clara sat down at last for the first time in 4 days, in a proper chair with a back on it. Her legs told her they had been waiting for that chair for a long time. She did not let it show. They sat in Hollister's office for the better part of 6 hours. Clara told her story first, beginning with the knock at her cabin door in the blue hour before dawn, and she told it the way she read Snow, leaving nothing out and adding nothing in, and Hollister wrote on his yellow pad and did not interrupt her once. Then Ethan told his, and his story matched hers in every particular that mattered. Then Pike, when the doctor had patched him enough to talk, told his and Pike's story about Harlan Vance and the card house in Butte, was a story Hollister had been waiting to hear for 3 years, and Clara saw the marshal's pencil speed up at the name of Vance. Lucas Cole told his story last. It was a shorter story than Clara had expected, and a sadder one. He had been a man who had loved his brother's wife in a quiet way for 6 years, and had been spoken to carefully by that wife and by her cousin in a way that had made him think slowly over 2 summers that he had thought of a thing he had not thought of. He had taken the shot at his brother's back with his own hand, and Clara did not excuse him for that, and neither did the marshal. But by the end of the telling, it was plain to every person in the room that Lucas Cole had been the smallest piece on a board that 2 other women had owned from the first move. Emily Cole spoke last of all. She did not weep this time. She told it the way a woman tells a thing she has decided to lay down. She had met Rose Calder at a tent revival in St. Louis when they were both 19. She had married Ethan Cole 2 years later because her father had wanted her to. She had written to Rose every month for 11 years. She had asked Rose in the winter of 1890 to come west and help her leave. Rose had answered with a different plan. Emily had said yes to the different plan. Everything that had followed, Emily said, had followed from that yes. "Mrs. Cole," Hollister said quietly when she was done. "Yes, Marshal." "Why are you telling me all of this without a lawyer present and without being asked?" "Because Miss Hayes told me to keep my mouth shut 3 nights ago across a fire, and I have been thinking about it ever since, and I do not want to keep my mouth shut anymore. I am tired, Marshal. I have been planning this for 2 years, and I am tired." Hollister wrote it all down. The telegraph from Hope came in at 4:10 that afternoon. A small dark-haired woman in a black coat had tried to buy a ticket east under the name Mrs. Calloway. The ticket clerk who had received his telegraph at 11 that morning had sold her the ticket and sent a boy out the back door to the deputy sheriff. They had taken her on the platform. She had drawn the pistol and fired 1 shot into the boards and had been disarmed by a porter with a mail sack. The silver was on a pack mule in the livery behind the station. All 8,000 accounted for. She was in a cell. She was not, the telegraph said dryly, in a good mood. Hollister read the telegraph aloud to the office. He looked at Clara over his spectacles. "Miss Hayes." "Marshal." "You called it in Hope." "I called it in Hope." "How?" "Because a woman who has carried a thing in her head for 2 winters does not run to a strange town. She runs to the first town she remembers the name of, and a woman from St. Louis remembers the name of a town on a rail line because she has been staring at it on a map in her kitchen for 2 years. Hope is on the Northern Pacific. Hope goes east. East goes home." "Miss Hayes, I am going to buy you supper." "Marshal, you are going to pay me my fee, and you are going to pay Mr. Cole's bounty on these 3, and you are going to cut me a federal voucher for the Vance matter, and then if there is any strength left in any of us, we will speak about supper." "Yes, ma'am." It took until after dark. The vouchers were cut. The fee was paid, the bounty on Lucas and Emily, and Pike was written out in careful federal script, and the silver was locked in the marshal's safe with a receipt in Ethan Cole's name. When Clara walked out of the marshal's office into the cold street with Ethan Cole beside her, she had in the inside pocket of her coat more money than she had held in her life, and she had a piece of paper from the federal government that made her, in the plainest way possible, a wealthier woman than any woman in Brannigan's Creek had ever called her names about. She stood on the boardwalk and breathed the cold air once. "Mr. Cole?" "Miss Hayes." "You owe me a conversation." "I do. I am ready to have it now. Here on the street." Here on the street." He took off his hat. He held it in his good hand against his chest. "I said I trusted you. I still do. That has not gone away in 6 hours, and it will not go away in 6 years. I do not know what I am going to do tomorrow, Miss Hayes. I do not have a wife anymore. I do not have a brother anymore. I have a homestead with a cold stove in it, and a kitchen I built with my own hands, and nobody to cook in it. I am not asking you to cook in it. I am not fool enough to ask any woman that, least of all you. I am asking you when I ride north in a week or two, and try to figure out what kind of life a man builds after the life he had has been taken apart, whether I can write to you. That is all. Just a letter now and again." Clara Hayes looked at him. The lamplight from the marshal's window fell on his face. He was a man who had been cut open from collarbone to soul in 4 days, and who was still standing upright on a boardwalk in Missoula and asking a woman for permission to write her a letter. "Mr. Cole." "Yes, Miss Hayes." "A letter is a small thing." "It is." "I have not received a letter in 11 years. I figured as much. The address is Clara Hayes General Delivery, Brannigan's Creek, Montana Territory. Until I tell you different. And I will tell you different inside the year because I am not staying in that cabin another winter. I am going to Oregon. My mother talked about Oregon before she died. There are apple trees there, Mr. Cole. I am going to buy some." "Yes, ma'am." "You may write to Oregon, too, when I tell you the town." "Yes, ma'am." "Put your hat back on. It is cold." He put his hat back on. They did not touch each other. They did not need to. Two people who had ridden 4 days through snow and lies and gunfire, and who had stood together in a mountain pass while a man came around a corner with a rifle, did not need to touch each other on a Missoula boardwalk to know what had been said and what had been agreed. "Marshall said supper," Ethan said. "Marshall said supper. I could eat. So could I. Mr. Cole, one last thing. Yes, Miss Hayes, your brother. When the judge passes on him, if he does not hang, and I do not believe he will, because the judge is going to see what I saw, that he was the piece and not the hand. If Lucas Cole comes out of a territorial prison in 10 years, a changed man, and if he rides up to your homestead, and if he asks to be let back into your life, what of it, Miss Hayes? What will you do?" Ethan Cole looked down the dark street of Missoula for a long moment. Then he looked back at her. "I will not shoot him, Miss Hayes. I have been a man who wanted to shoot him for 4 days, and I am done being that man. I will not take him back either. There is a difference between not shooting a man and pretending he did not put a bullet in your back. But I will not spend the rest of my life standing over his grave with a shovel in my hand. My life is not for that. No, Mr. Cole, it is not." "Is that the right answer, Miss Hayes?" "Mr. Cole, it is the only answer a man builds a second life on." She stepped down off the boardwalk into the street, and he stepped down beside her, and they walked together toward the one lit window at the end of the block where a hand-painted sign said, "Hot Supper." And they walked at the same pace without either of them adjusting to the other, because they had been walking at the same pace for 4 days, and they had not known it until now. Behind them in the federal marshal's office, 4 prisoners waited for a judge. In a cell in Hope, a small dark-haired woman in a black coat sat with her hands folded and her jaw set, and $8,000 in silver sat in a livery safe with a receipt against it. In Butte, a cardman named Harlan Vance was about to receive a visit from 2 federal deputies he had not known were riding his way. And somewhere high above all of it, above Missoula, above the pass where Pike had come around the corner at a gallop, above the Cutter cabin, where a blue ribbon had been tied in a bow on a kitchen table, the snow was falling again on the Rockies, the snow that had told Clara Hayes every piece of this story for 4 days, while men had told her lies. The mountains had not lied to her once. The mountains never did. And Clara Hayes, who had walked out of them for the last time on the night of November the 16th, 1892, with a man beside her whose name she had earned the right to say out loud, did not walk back into them again for the rest of her long and well-lived life.